So I guess we start as we always do. Anybody bring anything for show and tell? I'd like to thank Elwood, by the way, for putting show and tell on our minds here to start with. You brought an item or two, and it's caught on, and I look forward to it. So, you brought an item or two back in time to show and tell.
Oh, okay. About one thing, I'm about to run out. That looks like a nut, and I guess it is, but that is the nut that holds a wagon wheel on the scheme. Wagons around here have wooden axles, and then they have a metal end on it called a scheme, and on the end of that, of course, is a place for a nut. I'm amazed at the technological knowledge that was needed 100 years ago. For instance, this fit on the left wheels, which means that it had left-handed threads. Otherwise, when you go down the road, it would unscrew the nut. The right wheels had right-handed threads. And sometimes we've been in a situation like the road around the cliff up here was so narrow wagons couldn't pass, and sometimes you'd have to back up for maybe 100 yards or something. And I've seen these, they tend to roll the wrong way when you back up, and when you go forward they tighten up, but the nuts come off and let the wheel come off.
I never thought about that.
The wagon had a rear axle assembly and a front axle assembly, and there's something they call a coupling pole, which was usually a kind of a 2x4 size tough hickory hewn out pole that held the wagon together, and it went to the front axle and had a pin in the middle so the wheels could do that, and then a yoke that went on forward, and in the middle of that yoke the tongue fit in there. That's the wooden thing that went between the two horses forward, and to hold the wagon front wheel carriage to the tongue is where the pulling came through. There was something called a coupling pin, and the coupling pin had a C-shaped end on it, and that just fit on these, and so that was the lug wrench to take these off. And like if you would go to Stony, you probably would need to stop and grease the axles with axle grease on an empty wagon, because you had to lift it and slide it off. But you probably wouldn't go there and back without adding axle grease.
Well, if those, I've always heard that those, and I've seen them, the wheels are wood, and they say that they depend on water to swell them. About how often would they run the wagon through the creek or through the river?
Well, it depended. A wagon wheel has to have a dish in it. You know what that means? The wheel's not straight up and down, but it's got a bowl in it, like a saucer. And when it's like that, the pressure of the spokes outward and the pressure of the steel tire inward keeps the wagon wheel with the dish in it and makes it many times more strong than just a straight up and down thing.
Would be.
So when it got a little bit loose, that would let the thing move and fall apart. But if your wheels are in good shape and not seasoned out too long, you may go. Of course, at our place, we went through the river every time we went in and out, so that kept them, what they call it, soaked up.
Would be like
but if you didn't, if it set up all a month or so and you need to haul some coal, you probably want to set in the water for a day or something.
I know I've heard tell that D. Smith always, certain days of the week, he'd drop his over somewhere down this side of where he lived there. Yeah. Out there along, I guess, past the bridge going over to Sycamore, or someplace there.
It's according to the season, the humidity.
And,
and I expect those guys knew something about humidity
back
then.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Well, that's good. I'm so glad she filmed this tonight. We need that. That's lost. Randy, all the time we've heard them talk about making wagons, I never have heard nobody talk with that much know about it.
And it's amazing the stuff that's under that wagon.
You
Yeah.
know,
It just amazes me to see how they're built.
so have you driven a team in front of a wagon, Elwood?
Oh, yeah. We a 1-horse wagon and a 2-horse wagon. My brother and I moved my sister from Colston Creek to Carbon Glow in a wagon across Mill Branch. That's an interesting experience for a little boy. It's a steep and all, but oh yeah, and then we had cattle, and there was a mill up the road about a mile, and they could grind corn and cob all together. And Saturday afternoon, we took several bushel of corn in a wagon up there, and they'd grind it, and we'd bring it back, and we've all called Charlie Cottle had a coal tipple right over yonder.
Yeah.
I guess everybody remembers where that was. But anyway, we'd come there and get coal. It'd haul about a ton. But yeah, I've done a whole lot of that. And of course, you got 1-horse wagon is a bit different from 2-horse. In the 2-horse, you had a lead horse and an offside horse. The one on the left was the lead, and the one on the right was supposed to follow the good horse that was on the left. Had check lines that forked over the horse's shoulder, and on the pulling to the right, one of the leads went to the right bridle on this one and to the right bridle on the other, and then the same thing over here, it divided. And
So if you G'd them, it'd turn them both.
both of them, yeah.
Right, yeah. Which is also pretty clever.
Yeah, right. So there was my dad used to haul. His uncle had a store up there near where I live, and they would, before the railroad came in, they would go to Stone Eagle, Virginia, for him and get goods for him to sell in his store. And he told something that I thought was very interesting, that some fellow had gone over there and was coming back up the steep black mountain toward the top, and that coupling pole broke. And so here went, 6 or 7 barrels of flour rolling down the mountains and hit trees and splashed. And the story was the fellow stood there and looked and said, "Do you reckon that could be sold?"
Now, I've always heard that when they get to the top of the black, coming back this way with a load of goods from Stone Eagle, they cut a log and tie it behind the wagon, chain it behind the wagon, drag it off the hill as a brake. When they get to the foot of the hill, a man named Frank Sturgill had a sawmill there. He'd give him a nickel for the log. He got all his logs hauled in. They had a brake coming down the hill. You think that's true?
I really never heard that, but it could very well be. The only trouble is what happens when your chain breaks or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, Dad told me that way back. He said that's the way they did it. Frank,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
He said he'd been with them. They take them over there.
And sometimes, I do know that sometimes they put a chain through the wagon wheel, in front of a spoke and fasten it to the bed of the thing and make that wheel slide. Of course, that was not a good way to keep from wearing your tires out. But, I'm talking too much.
No, you're not.
But,
You certainly aren't.
They made this the wood wheel with the spokes and so forth, and it had to be tight, pressure out this way and pressure this way. And the tire was made out of steel, about yay wide and half-inch thick, I guess. And they would build a great big fire up here like the back boys. I've seen them do that. Get that tire like cherry red, and of course it expands. I expect that would expand 3/8 of an inch or something, probably, and so that it would slip down on with a little hammer down on the wooden tire, and then they would wet that to cool it off, and sometimes it just almost shrink itself right into the wood.
And compact all that stuff in the middle around the hood
right.
and all
So
that.
made it a very tight tire. Then a few years ago, Randy's brother-in-law lives down in North Carolina, and his father-in-law used to have like a old time get together. I was down there one time and they had these fellas making a wagon wheel. And I did a video of them, cutting out the wood and then heating up the tire and putting it on the wheel and hammering it down and cooling it off. And somewhere I've got a video of it.
To emphasize that a little bit, a duck's nest or a regular firebox is this size.
Right, in a forge.
That's right. A wagon wheel forge is, well, that big at least.
Well, what I've seen in both places was they just built a fire all around, but
Yeah.
laid the wagon wheel down and built
Yeah.
the fire on the ground.